Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Ramblemancy. Uh, Welcome one and all to the Ramble fam. We are here on the eve of Halloween Eve, and thus we are dressed accordingly. Um, we are joined tonight by special guest Rick Budd coming back to chat with us again. Rick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me back. Very
Yeah.
few people invite me back to anything, so this is kind of an honor. Yeah.
Crimes. That's
Ugh,
crimes.
crimes.
Uh,
Absolutely criminal.
yeah. We also unfortunately couldn't get Freeman in the studio today, so instead we were joined by the Invisible Man. Uh,
Hello there. I've quite lost my mind.
This
Thank
is-
you for having me.
this is genuinely one of my favorite beginnings of a stream.
Wait, I've tipped my hat to you, but I lost it. Hold on. I need to go. I think Calcifer's burning something. Not the
Oh.
bacon.
Well, the chaos of this stream.
Great start. Yeah.
Just the
Love it.
chaos of this stream is incredible already.
So good.
Very on brand. Well, welcome everybody. And before we get into tonight's episode, we have a few quick announcements and reminders. So first of all, the impending doom. No, the impending day is of Halloween is coming, and on that day, where you normally wouldn't see us on Sundays, you will this time because we will be John Freeman and I will be streaming the Blackout Club, which many of you may remember us playing last Halloween with a whole different group of people. It's a game teens in a neighborhood investigating spooky happenings, and but we will be joined by one Rachel Billings or Ray Bird or Ray, who you will know from previous Ramblemancies that she's been on, as well as some of our charity specials, and you can find her with John on her own channel, Ray's Retros, playing Metroid. Which one is it?
We're playing Super Metroid,
Right.
which is like my childhood obsession game. Like everybody, I feel like has at least one game that they played the hell out of
Right.
in their childhood, and that was mine. So I basically am functioning as a living map and also hazing Ray.
Good. Yes. Excellent. Get that. You gotta get that classic feel of like couch co-op with an older sibling, right? Where they're just like messing with you the whole time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't remember what the one, oh, there was one this week that I did where I knew that the screen doesn't pan down right away as you're coming down like this little like step of platforms. And I know that there's just like safe ground underneath it. But I truly, I just thought about it for a second. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it's this room. And Rachel was like, what's wrong with this room? Because we hadn't saved for like since she had killed the boss,
Mhm.
the most recent boss, and I was like, nothing. And she's like, I don't believe you. And like truly there was nothing wrong with it. But so I was like, oh well, if we're gonna do this, then I was like, nothing's wrong with it, just don't fall off those platforms. And so she gets super nervous, gets like 3 or 4, and then like panics and falls off of one and falls this far, like falls like 2 blocks down the screen, pans down, she just falls onto solid ground. It's like basically falling into ankle deep water.
Yeah.
So mad at me.
So yeah, so you'll be able to catch us on Sunday playing the Blackout Club and being very very not good at it. It'll be lots of fun. We will be a bunch of
There'll be
hapless.
a lot of screaming.
There will be a lot of screaming. There will be a bunch of hapless
So
teens
much
running
screaming.
around a neighborhood trying to not get caught by monsters and sleepwalkers. So
It's spooky. It is very spooky. I just
So-
played the tutorial.
yeah, so you can catch that. John, I usually don't have to do this, but what time are we doing that?
5 p.m.
Right.
5 p.m. Pacific. Just a little bit earlier because
Right,
Rachel
yes.
is on Eastern time.
That's
So,
right. That's right. That's right. So yeah,
and we'll be playing for a few hours.
Mhm.
So
yeah. So you can come by and catch that. That's pretty much it. That's all of our announcements. I think that's the only thing we have going on right now until
Yeah.
the month turns over, and then we have new stuff to talk about. So
Mhm.
that's pretty much everything. So yeah. Uh, so let's get tonight's episode started. John, what do you got for us? I know you know. I know you were ready for that one. I telegraphed that one.
A little bit. Actually, while y'all were both while you were getting water, Lucas,
Mm-hmm.
and the invisible man was being invisible. Um Rick and I were talking a little bit about like the length of TTRPG
Mm.
shows and like the sustainability of that for both like cast and audience. And so I think that's a fun place to start because like when you're playing a home game of Dungeons and Dragons or like an RPG with your friends, like you play for 6 hours, whatever. Everybody's in the same room. You have a bunch of snacks like piled on the table in the middle of it. Like you can kind of marathon and like just fade in and out of actually playing the game, which is like a very quintessential home game experience, I feel. But when it comes to actual plays, we were talking about, so like I suppose there's a question in here somewhere, and like both from an audience standpoint and then from like a producer cast standpoint, what's the comfy and what's too much
Mm.
for actual plays for you? Because I think the thing that sparked it specifically is we were talking about actual plays that stretch for like 4 hours, like for instance Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
And I am always flagging by that fourth hour. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I really want to keep paying attention because this is interesting, but also
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, cover some of the ground that we covered, but it's like, yeah, it's like there. I don't know. For me, there's that there's that experience we've many of us probably had where someone's like, my Dungeons and Dragons group is, playing this weekend. You should come over and watch us. And you go over to your friend's house and, and then they're having some like 6 hour marathon session that they're all super deeply invested in. But, you not being a player, are sort of zoning out and, and they're, I guess starting off with that difference between like, there are the games that are interesting to the people who are playing in the games, and then there are the games that are interesting to people who are watching the games, and some very often those are not, those call for like very different things, like when you have an audience or something.
Right.
And then when you do have that audience, it's like, how long will they sit for before they hit that limit of what you can pay attention to and how much information you can assimilate. um yeah, it's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I always compare it to like, like Power Play is like a superhero show, and like, the CW has a million superhero shows and they're 45 minutes long,
Mm-hmm.
and Power Play is like 3 hours. On the other hand, it's like a baseball game or like a football game is like three and a half hours, and its fans happily sit for those, 4 or 5 times a week. It's like a Dodgers
Right.
fan will watch every game that week, and you're like, so is my thing more like a narrative entertainment, like a CW show? Is it more like a sporting event, like where you're watching people play a game? And I don't know. I'm not sure I've actually come up with a great answer for that yet.
Yeah. I kind of agree. Like I don't think that I've seen a good answer either for like at least as far as like on the production side, because I do agree like as a viewer it at a certain point it does start to drag a little bit, right? Like and it varies I think for everybody, but like for me it does tend to be around like maybe that third or like fourth hour, right? And it does tend to be around there. But it's one of those things like what I think I genuinely, not to get too deep too early into this conversation, but I
Oh no,
genuinely
let's get
think
deep.
let's
Yes.
do okay, let's do it. I genuinely think that a while like weeks and weeks ago, one of our mods asked us a question on Ramblemancy about like the future of actual plays. And honestly, like we had I think there were a lot of good insightful things that were said during that conversation, but I think one thing that I've been thinking about ever since is that I genuinely believe that if there is to be a future of actual plays, which I think there is, but but that future will really only be able to come about if we start asking ourselves the question of like what are we trying to preserve when we stream our games, right? Like, what aspect of the game are we trying to preserve the entertainment TV-ish sort of side of it, or are we trying to preserve the game side of it? Like you said, Rick, basically it's the difference between like the CW show, right? The CW superhero show and the baseball, right? Like the baseball game. It's the difference between those two things. Like, which aspect are we trying to preserve? Are we trying to preserve the aspect of playing the game at the table, or are we trying to preserve? And I don't know that that's like an either or per se, right? I just think that it's a matter of finding how to keep that balance.
Yeah, that all sounds spot on to me. And it's like the problem, of course, comes where it's like for like a CW narrative show, when they want to establish a scene, there's just a shot of the room you're in. When they want to show you a character, that guy just walks on screen. When you're doing RPG content, everything has to be described by the dungeon master, everything, it takes so much longer. So if you had a 45-minute actual play, it's like, nothing would happen. You'd get
Right.
like, 3 minutes of actual storytelling because it's so hard to get a lot out, and make it feel satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I feel like the 3 hour, sort of the large 3 hour span, is it's kind of needed because like you kind of need 3 hours of actual play to get out about the same kind of story that you would get out in like, an hour of a TV show or something like that.
Right.
And like with some of the shows that I've done, it's like I have always tried to lean towards, thinking of my shows as something, that I want the people watching to enjoy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because like, there are definitely a lot of philosophies about this, and I'm a big believer is like that there is no wrong answers to this stuff.
Right.
You can certainly be like, hey, me and my friends, we're going to play our game, we're going to do it for ourselves the way we want, we're going to point a camera at it, and if people want to watch, great. If they don't, whatever, we're playing for ourselves. And then there's that philosophy of like, no, I'm making an entertainment product. I want to sort of try and take that into account, and say to myself, is this something that, might be fun for somebody else to watch? And how can I jack up the elements that are interesting, that make it, a little more compelling.
Right.
And I have probably always leaned a little bit to that side, like Tempting Fate and Power Play have always been a little bit more, I've tried to be a little bit more audience friendly. And one of the ways I sort of try and get at that is like I tend to gravitate towards, especially for streaming, systems that have light rules.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I know some people love crunch, if I'm in a private game in somebody's house, I'm not really worried about this kind of stuff. It's kind of different. But like, say for Tempting Fate, we played Lasers and Feelings, which
Mm-hmm.
basically has like two rules,
Right.
and
Yeah.
the beauty of it was that like you did not have to, you did not have to think about that at all. It was the players can totally throw themselves into being their characters, thinking of funny things to do, just like feels like a lot of energy, going on. And I feel like sometimes systems that are too rules heavy kind of step on that energy, for broadcast. So it's like, I've worked on some streams where it's like the systems were a little crunchy, and you would get this effect where it's like, some huge moment is coming up, the heroes all, they run in, the villains good, and then it's like roll. And then you sit there and count dice and do math, and like 10 minutes goes by until the GM's like, okay, here's what happens. And it's like, it could take a little bit of the, the kind of energy and the narrative
Yeah.
momentum out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I think so I'm definitely one of the people who, like, in my TTRPGs, I like a little bit of crunch. Like, if something I need enough in there that I can, like, I have something that I can, like, grasp onto, right? So it's something that feels like there are rules, right? Because if it's too rules light for me, I start to like lose the I start to lose the shape of the game a little bit, and like I recognize that is like fully like a me thing. That's not everybody. That's
Again,
fully just
no wrong answers to this stuff.
Exactly.
It's a matter of taste.
Right. And so, but for me, where that comes in is, so I would say that like Cypher System is definitely a crunchy game, right? It's not like the crunchiest game, but it's got some crunch. The thing that I find about Cypher is that the where that happens tends to be in that moment where you, like what you were just talking about, Rick, where you set up this high tension scene and whatever, and then it comes time to roll, and then everything comes to a screeching halt while the player like goes through, calculates all of their like step reductions of difficulty, and they're like, oh, I have this too, and like that can be fun, and I think it works barely in Cypher because there's a bit of a bartering that is happening between the players and the GM. There's a back and forth where the player's like, does this affect it? And then, or the players will go, can I do this thing? And the GM will go, you know what? Why don't you spend this resource? And yes, that kind of thing. And I think that can be pretty entertaining to watch, and that's good for filling that spot. But I think you're right about those systems where the only thing is very objectively the dice, and then you sit there and you calculate all the totals and everything, and like that's when I think you're absolutely right. It does absolutely bog down there.
Yeah, when I was first putting together Power Play last year, I looked at basically every superhero role playing system that I think has ever been, marketed as far as I could tell. I must have gone through like 40, systems, just kind of first with very cursory examinations of the rules. And then somebody sort of guided me towards mutants and masterminds. And I was very close to making Power Play work on the mutants and mastermind system, which is strangely enough by the same guy who makes Icons, which is the system I eventually went with. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting contrast, right? Because it's like I eventually passed on mutants and masterminds kind of for this reason, where it's like it's a very crunchy system, and it's like, you got to respect the hell out of it, because like a lot of effort was put into really thinking about how superpowers work and making them all feel different, right? Because like there are definitely some systems where it's like you all have different superpowers, but then you look at the rules and it's like, you all kind of have the same superpower, just with like a different narrative skin on it,
Yeah.
And it's like with mutants and masterminds, they, super speed is a totally different thing than, using magic, which is totally different than being like a tech suit Iron Man guy. It's like they've really differentiated everything. But like to do that, to GM that game, you have to really know all these systems. And it's like, moving at super speed in that game takes into account how fast everything is going and how much ground you can cover and how much so much time, and then what level the guy is, so what level of super speed. And it's like it's a lot to kind of crunch in a moment. And like I had this vision of like, trying to stage an entertaining battle where, all of these rules were kind of trying to, crunch, at once through the system. And it started feeling like a lot for me to wield. And then just by accident, I discovered Icons, also by Steve Kenson. And this is like, it's like he answered himself, right? It's like Mutants and Masterminds is the system that's full of rules if you want everything crazy defined and really, thought about in depth. And Icons is like the rules light version where everything's kind of approximate. And, there are rules, it's not lasers and feelings. There's a system there. Mm-hmm. But that system is, much more intuitive. It's much quicker to understand. And for me, it works much faster in play, where, we can now, we can get through investigatory scenes, or we can get through superpowers fights. And it's like, everybody's got different powers, and their powers all work in different ways, but we can all kind of understand what's going on. And I, as the GM, I'm not always constantly, wait, okay, your super speed. Okay. What time is it? What time did you start running from that thing to that thing?
You don't have to do calculus to find the.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, that's what sort of made it sort of like, okay, I can do the show now. Mm-hmm. I can do the show because I'll be able to keep up the narrative pulse. It'll feel like an exciting superhero show, because when we get to combat, it'll move at a pace that feels, not like a Marvel movie, but like the nice RPG equivalent of something like that, where it's like it gets exciting in a battle instead of suddenly slowing down mm-hmm. and getting all rules invested. Yeah. And it has mostly worked for us. It's like there's a thing where it's like every once in a while, it's like it's so approximate that like a player will ask a question that the book has no answer for. And, then it's just a matter of, as the GM, you just kind of, all right, here's how we're going to do that from now on. Mm-hmm. And then you hope somebody remembers, because when it comes up next time, you're always like, what did I roll on this? but it's functioned really well, and
Yeah.
it's functioned really well for us in that sense of like keeping the storytelling going.
Well, I also wanted to, and I want to address chat here in a second, but I also wanted to point out before I forget something that you said earlier too, Rick, which I think is a very interesting distinction, which is that like there's crunch, right? But not all crunch is the same, right? Because you're not going to find it all in the same spot. For instance, there's crunch in terms of like the complexity of the rules, and that's I think generally fine as long as the number of mechanics are small, right? If you've got to pay attention to all these different like systems for different tasks in the game, that's where you start getting into the weeds of stuff that I think then it becomes, in my opinion, bad crunch. Because then there's no possible way that anybody is going to like memorize or even approximate it in the moment. So you're going to spend a lot of time looking stuff up.
Absolutely. And from the perspective of
Hmm.
like, streaming and playing to an audience, it's enough to ask yourself and your players to like learn a game that's got like 100 different mechanics representing 100 different things. But for an audience who doesn't have like the book in front of them, may never have read it,
Yeah.
to try and figure all that out. Like when I was thinking about using certain systems, I would look at them and be like, okay, so when this happens, am I going to have like a thing on screen that like puts this chart up so the audience knows, has some idea of what's going on when this person rolls? Or am I going to explain, okay, this guy's trying to get, such and such a roll for such and such reasons, and just like stop every, roll to tell them what's going on? Or do we just let it roll and just hope people kind of figure out what's going on? And if they don't, just shrug our shoulders and be like, yeah, just trust us,
Yeah.
and that is a thing that you have to deal with, like, from the content production angle, which is like, D&D is pretty well understood. If there's one system, you can probably count on everybody to know it's going to be 5e. And then like lasers and feelings, you can literally put all the rules for the game in 2 sentences in the corner of the screen, and that's all they need to know for everything. But like everything in between, now you start getting to like weird places where it's like, is the audience going to understand what's going on here? If they don't, what's the point of having this mechanic in the game? If I have to stop and explain it, are they going to remember next week? To explain it every week? And it's like, I feel like those are things, you probably crunch through in advance in your head before you decide what system you're using, and what the nature of your stream is.
Right. Exactly. I wanted to, John, were you looking at chat? Because I sort of lost it a little bit.
Oh yeah, I have chat open. Gemini had some comments, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
Gemini Lightning.
Yeah, Gemini. Gemini gets around. Gemini Lightning said TTRPGs are like going to your personal theater or cinema. Any TTRPG that draws me in just grabs me, and I don't feel the time go by. Nothing grabs me like a TTRPG I'm invested in. And then a couple other comments. They said I also think that both sides of it. I think the we were talking about like the game side versus like the CW like highly produced side of it. I also think that both sides can be preserved as long as there's focus with enough of the other. And I think I think there's actual plays have to find some kind of middle ground, right? Because I don't think they can really be either. It can't if you want it to have, I think, mass appeal as a form of media, right? It can't quite be the fully we are just playing the game, because as we've been discussing the last few minutes, like going through all of the rules of the system to make sure that everything is working as it's supposed to in the way that you might if you were playing at home doesn't hold up when you're trying to make it like a thing that people can watch and be entertained by. And then on the other end of the spectrum, like you said, Rick, you can't really cut it down to like 45-50 minutes, because all of that time, like there's all of that efficiency from like a film and TV where they can kind of just show you a few things and then go, because what's going on now. Like all of that time that's lost, not really lost, all that time that's spent differently with the GM explaining it, like you can't really cut that down. And if you do, it's always like highly edited actual plays like that always feel really choppy to me, right? So there's got to be somewhere in the middle where you both have that kind of messy, raw feel that actual plays have, because they're a game happening, like a narrative game or an improv game happening, but also there's enough kind of production to it that it is a little more clean than what a home game would be.
Yeah, and to pick up on the end of Gemini Lightning's comment there, it's like, the key is like, is the can you get the audience invested, and what does that take? Because once an audience is invested, they will sit for a lot more than they will sit for if they're sort of just like, okay, let's go, entertain me. And I think that is, you see a lot of that, like, say, like when you watch, like, say, someone like Critical Role, it's like they come in knowing that their audience is invested. In fact, I was talking about this with someone the other night, where it's like, if you go to see, Fish play, and they start off on some jam that starts all weird and starts going on for 5 minutes and feels like it's just not going anywhere, the audience is just like waiting on bated breath, knowing that it's going to explode into awesomeness at any minute, because they come knowing that these guys are the best jammers in the universe. And eventually, it's like whatever weirdness is going on, it's going to become something awesome. And like Critical Roles fans, they come, and it's like, if you got a long stretch where you don't know what's going on, or something doesn't seem like, it's like their audience is invested to no end, and they will sit and wait as long as it takes until that pays off, and because they come with that investment, and just knowing that these people know how to create moments, and are gonna channel it into places that really like matter. And the question is kind of like, how do you, when you are not already as famous as Critical Role, and you don't sort of start with an invested audience or something like that, it's like, how do you pick that system, or how do you like set up a tone so that people can start to build that investment in a cast they don't know, or characters that they haven't met yet? Because, like, to take it back to what I was saying at the beginning, it's like when you are a player in the game, you have a totally different view of it. Like, everybody thinks their home game is the most interesting game in the world, and with the best, coolest characters, and it's true, because like that's the game you're in, and that's the world you're a part of. And it's like when you don't have that connection building your investment in it, it's like, how do you get somebody to sit back and be like, okay, I have no idea who Caitlin Bruder is, and I've never heard of Benny Beckett before, but all right, let me see where this is going. And it's like, I feel like it gets easy to, at least for me, it becomes easy to turn people off with, like, again, systems that are just too dense to let the gameplay, meld with the narrative and the character stuff. And also, it's like another thing that's sometimes kind of, I feel it's like people who build characters who are a little too dense to penetrate at first, so it's like they come in, they've written 4,000 pages of backstory, and start their character in a place that is too odd for most people to hook into when they don't know that 4,000 pages of backstory, and it's like, and sometimes that can work. It's like, some people can actually make that work, but it's like, there are so many moving parts with that it's like, by picking the right system and then populating it with the right players, who then kind of create the right characters, and then kind of getting all those gears to grind, in a way that's just smooth enough so that people could be like, all right, I'll sink into this,
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for like edited TTRPGs, or even like, this would be much harder to do live, I think, but like edited like tabletop RPGs, where you have stuff going on where, like when characters lose health, they like you can see like an HP bar go down on the screen, or when you meet a new NPC or character, having character art like come up on the screen as the GM is describing it, like having those kinds of things there to kind of keep pulling people along and keeping them drawn into the fiction, I think is one of the things that helps. Because like John Numa asked, is a TTRPG actual play like more like a book perhaps? And I think not really. Like, again, books are very clean. A TTRPG, like an actual play, is almost like that creative writing exercise where you write 10 sentences and then you pass it to the person to your right, and they write 10 sentences, and you get something new, and you all pass it around, and at the end you have a bunch of different story. I feel like that's a little bit more like, if you were doing like a clean version of that with professional improv actors, or like comedians or something, like that to me is what an actual play feels like, if we're going with like a written metaphor here. And
Yeah, that's not bad actually. Yeah.
yeah. And like the biggest job, having read books about writing and stuff like that as an English major, one of your jobs as an author, right, is to keep your reader engaged in the fiction, to make your words produce a kind of sustained dream that they can be carried along through. It's very, very flowery poetic language you get with that sometimes, but like actual play is kind of the same thing. Like you want people to be carried along in this imagined fiction that's going on here. And so like those little tools, like character, like action happening on the screen, like even things as simple as having your overlays appear a certain way. Like, if you're running for instance, like a Star Trek game, and your overlay looks like
L-cars.
yeah, it's got L-cars all over it. I'm like, oh, okay, L-cars, Star Trek, right? Or if you're running, like, say you were running like some kind of Star Wars game or something, like Mandalorian style or something, and so you've got like some very like dusty space western aesthetic to it. You're like, okay, now I know what I'm in here for, right? So I think those are all things that can kind of help pull people in visually to what's going on, because actual plays are weird in that some people consider them a visual medium and some people don't. And I think it's important to not forget that they are kind of a visual medium. There are elements of it that's static, but there are elements of it that can be dynamic, like very dynamic.
I feel like it's like, it's important to remember, right, which one you're in, because like there are people who do podcasts for this stuff, and those podcasts are endlessly entertaining to people. And it's like, it's just important that if you're just doing a podcast, don't get too wrapped up in, expecting that, the interplay of what's going on your players' faces is going to move people, where it's like, if you're doing like a visual stream, it's like, you can be like, and, the reactions of my players are going to add a lot of emotion. The reactions of my players are going to help draw people in. And you can add, it's like, certainly I definitely agree with you. It's like, use what you've got. The power play, we have the map of the city, which, I sort of added. It's like, I wanted the city like to kind of feel like a character in the game. And I really wanted people to understand that this part of the city was different than that part of the city. And when a character flies, here's how far they're going and stuff like that. And so, that was sort of, that was what I felt like it took like for my game. I was watching Critical Role last night, and Mercer, had this, amazing little mini set that, was just perfect for the combat that they were in. And, I get that stuff's expensive, but it's like, it just, again, it's like, for a slightly crunchier system like 5e, where the combat moves a little bit slower and you might not remember where everybody is standing or what's going on, or this guy scooted up to the front or behind that guy, it added a lot to be able to kind of just keep your eyes on those minis. And then like he had like a thing where it's like, this person shot their fire powers, and he's got a little fire thing to put down to show you, the area of effect of the fire. And it's like, it really helps,
right,
you process what that combat feels like. When we did Shield of Tomorrow at Geek and Sundry, we built out the whole set to look exactly like Star Trek. Like we called Paramount, and they like literally sent us like photos of like, the whole next gen ship and stuff, and like the dimensions to exactly what sizes everything would have to be. I wish I could show you. It's like I have a small part of that set on my wall back here. So,
nice.
But it's like, it's like just like a little piece of the L-cars overlay, but it was like, and it was like, when you saw it and you saw the players step in wearing their, next gen tunics and sit in front of that background, it was so kind of entrancing, as like, oh my God, this is a Star Trek show. And it works so well. Apparently, like this, there's a gif of, Bonnie Gordon from Clear Skies or something that is continuously picked up by the media and used as an actual Star Trek, shot.
Yeah, I've been seeing the buzz about that recently.
That reminds me, by the way, Freeman, somebody, I saw somebody use a GIF of you the other day, I saw somebody use a GIF of you the other day, and I think it was actually, I think it might, yeah, but it was very funny. It was like they were like using it like the little scheming one, like
it is good.
Mm-hmm. That's
It is
incredible.
good. I'm glad. It is a good one. I had some thought. I had a thought.
Yeah.
I am. First of all, how weird is this?
It is easy to forget that you're there because you are literally invisible.
yeah, truly.
It's
I didn't think about this. I spent so much time figuring out how this would work and what pieces I would need and what the lighting would have to be like so that the two pieces would match more or less, or how the chair has to be, since I'm not actually sitting in the chair properly. It's actually at 90 degrees to the chair. Otherwise, it would just look like a invisible black or hole piercing the chair. It wouldn't really have if I was really an invisible man, you would see the chair behind me, but I couldn't figure that out. But I didn't figure,
Gotcha.
I couldn't actually think about how it would be very hard for everyone to see me emoting. I'm emoting as usual. My eyes are bright. My smile is wide. Just, you have to believe me here. Oops.
You could be
This
doing
is what I
anything
mean.
under there.
This is what I mean, where it's like the reactions of people can really help draw you into
Right.
stuff. Like right now, it's like Freeman's expression is just making us all feel so many things. Maybe. I don't know. Depends on what you imagine it to be.
I moved to tears here at the emoting. Like,
Oh my god.
But there's something also about whatever game you're playing. There's something about a game in person or with an audience, or having an audience in a show versus having an audience or playing games with your friends on Zoom or online. I'm certainly someone, me personally, I'm someone who, like, I feed off of the audience's reactions, their faces, their emoting, their laughter, or just whatever. I feed off of that, and that's like a give or take. They don't have to do much. You just need to laugh, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right, or whatever. So there's that energy from that I love, and I feel like that is something I personally miss a lot. And it's interesting to find. I'm just adjusting my invisible nothing. There's ways, exercises I've been trying to work on to get that same kind of energy feedback over Zoom and stuff.
That's a good point. Because, like, you said that, and I agree. Because I very much am that way. In fact, I was literally talking about this earlier today. I am someone who, like, I mirror the energy of the people that I am with. And that the person I was talking to was like, wow, superpower. I was like, not always, because it works if there's nobody there who's mirroring, and if everybody's like super low energy, then I mirror that too. But which is but like that is a very good point, Freeman, because it's one of the reasons why I won't play an online game if there's no cameras. I won't do it.
Yeah.
Because I cannot pick up on other people's enthusiasm, their energy, any of that. I can't do it if I cannot see them. That's so important for me. And even when I can see them, it's not the same as being in the room with them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just so Gemini is pointing out, thankfully I have Caitlin, who by herself, her own like facial expressions and the energy that goes into that could power a small city. But like
yeah, I remember playing games in person with Kaylin for the first time at Gen Con 2019, and it was just wild. Like, she's so much energy at a gaming table. Even through this medium, which I think you do lose a fair bit of it through it. So like you have to find ways to kind of compensate for that. But still even with Caitlin at the table, she's just so expressive.
It's like Drac says after almost every episode of Infinite Horizon, Drac is like, could you imagine how powerful we would be if we were all in the same place, in the same space?
Oh my god,
amazing!
Like, I started running D&D for my roommates about a month ago, every couple of weeks. Because about every other Monday night is as much as all of us can handle in terms of literally just our ability to be in one place, all of us in one place at one time. And like I hadn't done that in a long time, and I just forgot. Like I had a friend who lives nearby who's also vaccinated come guest, and it was just like I had forgotten how just easy it was to play off people that you're sitting a foot away from, and it was just electric. I was like, oh my god,
Mhm.
I had forgotten what this was like. I missed it definitely, and so it's wild. The Infinite Horizon crew all in one place would be just a force to be reckoned with.
Have you never played all in one place?
So many of us in the Infinite Horizon crew have played together in person, but not that group specifically together. So like when we first met Olivia, and when like we first, like the first time that we were like really that we really interacted with Caitlin much at all in person, um we were at Gen Con, and we played just sort of a quick like D&D one shot together, and that's basically how we became friends. Um
Mhm.
but yeah, like that was the only time that even like part of that crew played together at the same table, in the same physical space. And we've never played in the same at the same table with Drac before, because Drac is across the Atlantic Ocean.
Mhm.
But yeah, but we've definitely talked about like the hypotheticals of like, oh yeah, future Gen Cons will all have to play together at the same table and it'll be great, and we like the world will explode because it's too powerful.
Yeah, I swear. We also power play. We've never played in the
Hmm.
same room. Like I've played with Sam and other, in Tempting Fate, obviously. And I've never met B in person.
Hmm.
And I met Caitlin at D&D in a Castle, where we played Lasers and Feelings together. And it was, sort of playing that game. I was just, I sort of remembered her from that when I started casting up power play. And I was just like, she just struck me as a very kind of cool player who made like very smart kind of story positive decisions, that
Hmm.
were interesting and fun, but not in like a game breaking way.
Right.
It's like some
Mhm.
people like they come up with this crazy idea and you're like, okay, that's maybe too crazy. It's like keep everything on the same page so that everyone can have fun.
Yeah.
And it's like she sort of always found ways to make decisions that drove stuff forward, without just derailing it all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was weird too, because like I did not pick up on at that particular moment, like in that game, like the sort of the expressiveness, that was something I found later online. And it's like, yeah, oh my god, it's like I'm picking screenshots, to tweet out our
Hmm.
VODs, and I'm always just like, yep, there's the Caitlin face.
Yep. Yeah. There. Caitlin has told me that she's very impressed with my ability to like maintain focus while she is emoting. There has only been one time I think ever on Infinite Horizon where like I like needed to really focus to like tune Caitlin's expressiveness out. So but yeah, no, but like it's great.
So we're
Like
just talking about Caitlin now,
yeah,
right? So
pretty
this is
just
just
I
Ramblemancy
was gonna
Caitlin
say
edition.
if Geekouts is still here, like you like clip this and we're gonna send it to Caitlin. We're gonna make sure
You
Caitlin
just
knows.
highlight the Caitlin blush monster section
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
stream, and then send it to her afterwards, because she's not here to defend herself. So
Yeah,
we can and will just be nice to her.
exactly. Um, so but no, it's coming going into Infinite Horizon when I invited Caitlin to be a player in that, because originally she was one of the writers, one of the world builders for it, for the setting. Um, and then when I invited Caitlin to be a player in it, she's like, okay, but I have to warn you though, I am very expressive, like annoyingly expressive. I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. I feed on that, so give me more. I feed on that. I live on this. So, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I did not realize that she'd started out like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Caitlin was originally part of the writing team, doing some of like the setting building for Infinite Horizon. So,
Yeah.
The the Orzai in Infinite Horizon are basically Caitlin's children.
That's We
There was
literally
just there
before
was
we
just a
named
day.
them, we started calling them that. Yeah.
We're like, we
Caitlin's
don't know
children.
what they're
Caitlin's
called,
children,
but we're gonna call them Caitlin's children.
Hmm.
There was just this like hour-ish of like fugue state of, oh, but what if, and then like going off and riffing on that, and I was just frantically, my keyboard blazed, like trying to
Yeah.
keep up with everything that was going on.
That one.
And then afterwards
Yeah.
we looked at it and we had adorable glow in the dark like mood ring bug aliens, and they were so cool. They're so cool.
Yeah, that was fully entirely Caitlin's creation. So yeah, but yeah, no, it's just that what you were saying, Freeman, about like the energy of in person versus online is also, I think, kind of goes back to an earlier conversation, right? Because that factors in as well, I think, into the whole actual play thing, right? Like factoring in the like, because I remember when we started out, we wanted to have all in-person games because I remembered having watched some like remote games on Twitch just to sort of see who was doing what out there, and I remember finding such a hard time to get engaged with those. And so we made, I will say this, it is a mistake, and we made this mistake assuming that just having people in the same room was going to be enough to bring that chemistry across, right? But it's not always the case. Like, just because you're in the same room doesn't mean that you're going to have the chemistry. And I guess like saying it out loud right now sounds obvious, but like at the time, at the time that seemed like, oh yeah, no, obviously if we're all in the same room, then we have got chemistry, and that's good.
Yeah, it's weird how that affects stuff. Like, we played 75 Tempting Fates or something like that in the studio at Saving Throw, and it became, like second nature to me to just kind of like run that kind of chaos, and like I sort of loved it. And then the pandemic came along, and I did like two of them online, like two charity games. One of them was John Wick, and I think the other one was DuckTales. And like, it was a lot of fun, but I found, especially for that sort of high chaos, high comedy type of game, not being all together really altered the vibe, as it became, it's like so much of being funny is like, the timing of it and reading people's expressions, and everybody kind of laughing together, and like when you're suddenly on Zoom, and it becomes so much easier to like not know when other people are talking, and everybody's kind of like isolated in their own little square. Suddenly it was like the comedy angle of it came much harder to kind of channel, and um you know while certainly there are funny moments in power play, I found it to be like a little bit easier for me to do, a dramatic game over Zoom than it was to do like a comedy
Yeah,
game.
I could see that. That's because I think one is much more reliant on timing and like the players being able to pick up on each other and like immediately follow up. I actually hadn't considered that. That's very interesting. Huh. I'm gonna have to think about
Yeah,
that one for a bit.
yeah, especially when you're trying to be funny with people, and it's like, you think you've got some great punchline, and then three people all come in at once because there are certain visual cues that you pick up from somebody when they're about to say something, and you're all sitting at the same table. Everybody catches that, but for some reason, like that kind of body language is much harder to channel when somebody's this big and just one of a bunch of squares in front of you.
Yeah, the clear example of this was actually something from our home game, Freeman, our home D&D game, which like this is an example of something that I think would be almost impossible to replicate on a Zoom call. But it was this instance where like I was running the game, and Freeman's barbarian character had like gone to like essentially the hardware store. I called it Gnome Depot. Anyway,
Gnome Depot.
it was, and he went to go like pick up a bunch of like tools and stuff like that. I don't even remember why you were doing it, but like you were there.
I don't either.
he got to like the point where he was like role playing with the clerk at the counter who was trying to like ring up these items, and there's just this incredible comedic moment where he's like where Freeman's character, for whatever reason, refused to put everything that he was holding and buying down, but was still trying to like get gold out of the pouch, and was struggling with it, but also is a barbarian with very low intelligence, so had to count it out as well while holding everything. And so the gnome clerk is just like, well, maybe would you just put on here? And like I started doing that, and Freeman just immediately picked up and started going, no, it's okay. And we just went back and forth with that very awkward, like cutting each other off, like, okay, but you can just put, and no, it's fine, I got it. I'll just do it. But you could just put it in. And we went back and forth like that for a little bit, and everybody was just like wheezing at the table because it was so funny. But you couldn't do that because it relies so much on like the intentional crosstalk. And the crosstalk of any kind is so much harder to do in this medium.
There's also that reaction of like hearing like a room full of people laughing when you do something funny, and when it doesn't sound the same over Zoom through a pair of headphones when everybody's in their own individual room laughing, even if that works like that. And I'm sort of reminded. I think it was like, God, this is a long time ago. I saw an interview
too.
Yeah, feedback, right. Yes, feedback is delayed. I remember seeing an interview years ago. I'm pretty sure it was with Michael Stipe, the singer from REM, talking about how it took him years to learn how to lip sync in music videos. Because like he was like, when I'm on stage and a mic in my hand and there's an audience there, he's like, I can really emote at the audience because they're all rocking right back at me. And he's like, and then when you're in the studio, it's like there's just some guy with a camera sitting like right there. And he's like, I feel so weird and self-conscious and awkward. He's like, it's like because there's nothing coming back at you, that he's like, it's like I couldn't even fake it convincingly because I suddenly became so self-conscious that I'm just singing it like a little camera lens. And it's like I feel like that is part of it, where it's like there is that when you are trying to be funny and you say something and the whole table bursts out laughing, it feels like you were funny.
Yeah.
And then when you're trying to be funny and it's just like the room you're in is just like silent, and it's like it's much harder to keep that vibe up.
Definitely.
You got to you have to bring the extra energy. I'm emoting, but you can't see it. You have to bring in the extra energy, which is when you're done, when you're not getting the feedback, it's like you almost feel drained at that point. Like I know
sorry, I'm laughing because Freeman came here tonight with an agenda, and his costume is in fact a commentary on the very point that he is making.
Just so you know, if the point didn't get across well.
I would say it's very meta, but I don't want to use that word.
Man, it's a floating cup. Oh my goodness. Oh.
Yeah, we have there's one part of this, the one part of the stream where we all get to complain about the recent corporate name change, and our inability to ever use that word again.
Sorry, Freeman. I didn't mean to cut you off. Just what were you saying?
I don't even remember. I think I was going to say something about lip syncing, like to a camera, to an audience, or to just like a small audience through like some platform, say like Snapchat or something.
Sorry, didn't mean to derail you like that.
No, it's funny. I almost couldn't say it without laughing, but it's like I actually honestly quite forgot my thought there, where that was going.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, one thing that, and maybe this will help you get back on that thought, but one of the things that Rick, what you were saying that I remembered is you're absolutely right. It's so hard to talk to a camera, and that's why I have the screen with the call on it directly in front of me, and the camera is in front of that, so like I can at least pretend for myself a little bit that I'm looking at a person's face and not a person's face on a screen, because I can't look at a camera. I don't know what it is, but I cannot talk to a camera. Every time I try, my eyes just go past it. I want to look anywhere but at the camera. I can't do it.
I feel like evolutionary, it's like you want to make eye contact with a person.
Yeah.
I've just like fully embraced that I'm never going to be looking actually at the camera. Like my eyes are always going to be kind of just below it, the way that I've got my setup currently. Or even if I think if I put it up a different way, I would also want that, because I've almost trained myself to do this bit, like where I look up when I talk into the camera, like this one.
Yeah.
And that's a bit that I do adore.
I do this one here.
Well done, sir.
Bravo. Bravo.
The thing is, I knew it was coming, and it was still extremely funny.
Weeks of deciding on an ordering and figuring out this costume to set up that joke.
Yep.
Oh my god.
That's it. Good show, everyone. Good night. It's been lovely having you all of you here this evening for Ramblemancy.
Months
Tune
from
in
now,
to our Sunday stream for Blackout Club next Wednesday.
Months from now, we're gonna look back on this stream and recognize this as the episode where Ramblemancy peaked, and
I mean, that was the moment, right?
it was right there. It's all downhill from here. We're done from now on.
You know,
it's never gonna get any better than this.
When we're writing like the post-mortem, or making like the post-mortem, documentary about rule of war, this will be the moment that we point to. We peaked.
So
we couldn't match that.
Oh my god.
There was no going up from there anymore.
So if anyone wants any Invisible Man to have a seat in their D&D game or so, just let me know. I think I got this bit down.
No, your dice aren't possessed. It's just him rolling.
Oh god. Okay, I'm okay now.
All right.
But yeah, no, God, what were we even talking about?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no. It is
Yeah, we had gotten off onto talking about camera placement and tricking ourselves into feeling like we were talking to a person that was directly in front of us. So I was dangerous.
I have taken to shrinking the window that I'm looking at people in and putting it as far to the top of the screen as possible. So
it's like the
sort of aligned the angle, but now everybody's really tiny. So
like the the teleprompter approach, basically, where you have to have the teleprompter at far enough away that it doesn't look like the person is reading, but not so far away that they can't see it. This is basically what just Geek Outs, I completely forgot about that. Geek Outs, the best part of actual play on Zoom, Bonnie Gordon as an eggplant. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. I don't exactly remember the context because it was forever ago, but at one point Bonnie basically turned herself into an eggplant on Zoom. I believe was some sort of penis joke. Or texting a joke about the emote or something like that. I don't remember the exact context, but I do remember Xander just dying. Xander could not breathe and was crying and yeah. Yep.
They are the best people.
Yeah, genuinely.
The ability to play with Zoom filters on remote games too is just incredible.
Oh no, we've reached this point of the stream.
I
Zoom
can't
costumes
see
on top of real costumes. Now we're getting meta.
I can't see anything due to my invisibility. It has rendered my vision.
That's right.
Quite
Freeman's
fuzzy.
basically. I don't know if y'all don't really know this, but Freeman right now is basically the entirety of this episode has essentially been in his own self-made sensory deprivation suit.
It is incredible.
This episode of Ramblemancy is brought to you from Freeman's Mind Palace.
This is interesting for sure.
Yeah.
It's he can't see us, we can't see him. It's fantastic.
It's a fair trade, I think.
That's how he did it. It's using the age old if they can see you, if you can see them, they can see you thing. So Freeman just made it so he couldn't see us, and that's how he became invisible.
Ravenous bug bladder beast of Trawl.
Alternatively, Freeman is wearing his ghillie suit currently. He finally finished his ghillie suit, his homemade ghillie suit, and he's wearing it right now. That's why you can't see him.
This is about my 10th or 11th ghillie suit.
It is exclusively for you. It is exclusively for use in recording studios, specifically where they do CGI. And
Yep. You've got to have a good set of urban ghillie suits in order to camouflage yourself most effectively
There you go.
within
Yeah.
cities. And then, even within those, you kind of have to adapt them based on locality. So you do have to like just as with one kind of in the wild, you have to leave some room for kind of weaving in bits of your environment into it.
Well,
Discarded cups of coffee,
exactly.
masks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Kiko says, actually, Freeman is a cryptid with the ability to turn invisible. That's true. Freeman is our resident forest cryptid. So,
Freeman has just turned his ability to blur his existence up to the max, which just blurs him out of existence
yeah.
visually.
Best part about this, you don't even have to be there right now. You could just like drape like a mannequin, and, in this suit, and then just every once in a while just rock the chair.
Yeah.
Freeman's taking a bubble bath right now.
Freeman decided to phone in this episode of Ramblemancy. Just like...
I recorded several different responses, assuming and had many different contingencies of what I'd have to say.
Yeah.
I recorded probably about 1,000 takes, and now I'm just playing the ones that I think need to be played, including that one and this one.
My God, I saw this thing like
This would be the best possible point for you to just walk in my bedroom door right now, Freeman. Like,
yeah. Sorry, what were you saying, Rick?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I saw this thing where this guy, during the pandemic, he had to attend like these work meetings, these big giant Zooms with 100 people on it every time. And he started to get the feeling that like nobody really cared if he was there or not, as long as they could see him in his window. So sort of a la, the video in the movie Speed, he kind of took some clips of himself just like sitting there and like set up a program so that it just kind of would play them in random order. So every once in a while it would look like he was sipping his coffee, and he just let it play for like 6 months, and like nobody ever talked to him and realized, he didn't go to a single meeting the entire time.
That's incredible. That is some next level stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, how is your lighting so consistent?
He likes his coffee.
I'm sorry. That is the most like content producer, like creator thing that you could have said in that moment, John. Like that was your takeaway. Like, how is your lighting so consistent?
Man, it's cloudy as fuck today. Like, how did you do that? How are you doing this? It's fucking magic, bro. Like, I thought so much about light.
Oh my God, that's
like between streaming on my own channel and then like producing actual like. I realized the other day because a friend put like, I'm gonna run a game on my personal stream like as a donation goal for like for their stream, and then they're like, okay, so how would I like, what goes into this? And then I just kind of like, I said a few things, and then after about 10 minutes I was like, it was one of those moments where suddenly you see yourself from the outside because you've been steeped in what you've been doing for so long, and now explaining it to somebody who knows what it is also from the outside but has never seen the inside of it. I was like, oh shit. I've gone. When did this happen? When did I know so much about making stuff?
Well, it's like when we first were meeting with the In Too Deep crew, and like we had like one of our earlier production meetings for that, and Colin, who like prior to that had only spoken with like one or two of us, and really only just sort of in terms of like the general, like not specific, here's what we are going to do in order to make this show happen, but just in terms of like the hypotheticals. We sit down and we talk through it a little bit. Colin tells us like kind of what he's looking for, and then all of a sudden the three of us and Caitlin start like rattling off, okay, so we got to do this, we need to have this done, we need to do this, and we'll get this. Okay, what are the deadlines for these things? All right, let's do this. And we started setting everything up, and at the end of it, Colin was just like, wow, you guys are so like professional. And I had to like stop for a second, and I was like, wait, are we? And because by that point we'd done this so many times that it was just like we just knew what needed to be done, and it was just it was another one of those moments where you see yourself through somebody else's perspective, like looking in. You're like, oh, hello.
Yeah. And from there, I think that's like wrapping it back around to kind of tonight's topic. Like all of this stuff, that's all stuff that goes into like making an actual play, right? Is okay, so are we going to do this pre-recorded or live? What assets are we going to need? We're going to need character art, we're going to need an overlay. So we need those things. The character art goes on the overlay. Are we going to use it in any other places? Are there any like clips that we can make of the show for pre-recorded beforehand so that we can tweet them out? How early do we want to start doing that? How much and what kind of promotional material do we want to make? Does everyone have good mic and lighting? Like like all of these little things that go into, versus let's stream our home game to let's make an actual play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. And and the best shortcut to that is to have really good people to work with who know what they're doing. It's like I produced web series before, and I worked at Geek and Sundry, where there was like sort of corporate production, but like it wasn't until I sort of went to Saving Throw that I sort of started doing this like independent streaming production. And it's like I, learned so much from Dom Zook over at Saving Throw, who had done this 100 times, and was very quick to be able to be like, all right, well, here's the 50 things you need to be thinking about right now. And I had thought of like 4 of them, so I was just kind of like, whoa, okay, this is all right. I was just like, we sit at the table and throw dice, and then I've been lucky enough to work with Dom and now with Jake, and at Q times, and it's like I think like there are times where everybody has to do their own thing. It's like not everybody can have a producer or a studio do the work for them, but it's like partnering with people who are equally as professional minded with you if you want to do like a professional stream, and partnering with people who have experience or know what they're doing if you can. It's like there is sort of no substitute for that kind of for learning, in that not having to reinvent the wheel by yourself. It just
Right.
yeah.
No, and as coming from someone who basically, like, from us over here at Rule of Lore, who did do it the hard way. We started out knowing absolutely nothing, and mostly now, like after launching 4, 5 actual plays now, 5 maybe 6, most of which happened during 2020, which so there was that. Now I would say that we still mostly know nothing, but
Now you're a jaded old pro.
no, but you're right though, because in having a conversation with Jake over at Q Times, kind of after an episode where he was here on Ramblemancy, afterwards we were talking about it, and he was kind of going through some of the stuff, and it made me realize how so many of the people that like I look up to in the streaming space are the people who know the least about the like nuts and bolts of it, right? They're the people who are on screen, who are not often the people who know how to put these things together. And that was a bizarre moment of clarity for me, where I'm like, oh yeah, all these people that I look up to, like, they know what they're doing. And then to realize I know more than them about the thing that I do. Right? Like, then, and that's bizarre. That was such a like moment of clarity. And like, this is not to like talk negatively about anything, because like everybody, like, if absolutely
no, talk negatively, it's okay,
absolutely, if you you're absolutely right, if you could have somebody do this stuff for you, do it, because it's a lot. But like but being so steeped in it, being like so involved in the learning process and in the doing of all the production stuff, you don't realize that some of the people who inspired you to get involved in this in the first place have no clue about what it is you do, and you've reached a point where you actually know more about this than the people that inspired you to be in it in the first place. And that was like, until talking to Jake, I had not even once crossed my mind that like the people that I looked up to were the people who were like on screen, who are not often the people who are behind the scenes. And I thought that was just, it seems obvious saying it now, but like it was a not when you're in it.
No, it's true, and it's something that stretches across entertainment, where
Mhm.
it's like you tend to think of shows and you're like, Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston's amazing, and you forget that it's like there is a team of writers and directors
Yeah.
and photographers and cinematographers and stuff who are all bringing years of super hot top level professional expertise to making that guy seem amazing. Now he's great at what he does, but he's just like the front facing part of it,
Right.
and it's like, so it becomes very easy to sort of give that front facing part all the credit for what you see. And, yeah, you forget that, it's like when we do, I couldn't do power play without Jake,
Mhm.
100% could not do all that on my own. It's like, that, and, and it's like, I don't know, like say a different version of like actually being in a game with players where it's like that's collaborative performance and this is collaborative production.
Yeah.
And you need to collaborate with the people who you produce with, as well as you need to collaborate with the people who you play with, and be able to kind of, yes, and them, and, just as much, and kind of roll with what everybody's putting down. And it's like, if not, it's like Mercer could not do Critical Role without this huge, amazing team he
Yeah.
has built, around himself. It's like that is the product of a lot of very savvy people, all bringing their expertise to bear at the same time, and and all of these shows are, it's like, there are great teams that work on, Adventure Zone and, Into the Motherverse and Motherland, sorry, and all these sort of big successes in the space. It's like almost none of them are just like, the product of some guy. It's like it's a team,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah, like Dimension 20 is so much more than Brennan Lee Mulligan, right?
yeah,
Or the Intrepid Heroes,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it just talks to, like, finding your partners, choosing them carefully, and like linking up with like-minded people to create the things you want to create, and then just accepting that it's like, those higher level productions come from collaboration, and not just from that one guy you see on screen.
Right.
um,
And I think that we're sort of transitioning into a different topic, which is also a topic that I really am fascinated by. But the sort of that collaborative side of this that extends beyond the immediate production, right? Like what you're talking about, Rick, which is like connecting up with people who like know more than you do about this, who are willing to like tell you some stuff and show you some things, and I think that to me is extremely important because I'm sure that those that when we were starting out, those people were out there, but we didn't know who they were, right? Like we didn't know who they were. So for us, we sort of had to feel our way around in the dark. We still kind of are, um, and is a hurdle that like we are, I think, largely still vaulting, but
but you have each other, and it's like, I think there's a big advantage to working with partners who you trust. And if you can't have a Dom Zook or somebody come in
mhm,
and teach you how to do it, it goes a long way to not be figuring it all out for yourself,
yeah,
and have somebody to like bounce ideas off of, and to work stuff out with. It's like there is, I feel like collaboration in and of itself, that two minds is better than one, and there's a lot to be said for that.
for sure. But it is
Yeah.
also one of the reasons why like whenever anybody like asks me like is like wanting to like do this and asks me questions about doing like streaming or but like specifically actual play stuff, I'm more than happy to talk to them about it because I don't know, I would not call myself an expert in any of this. I would say I am proficient, but I wouldn't call myself an expert in any of this. But I do know a lot of things right now that I didn't know when I was starting out that would have helped immensely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, I don't know probably as much as you do, even, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like, but like what I do know is, Dom and Jake's phone number, and I'm just happy to give that out to anybody. Somebody asked me advice, I'm just like,
Yeah.
here, call Jake. Don't worry, all hours, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
no, but yeah, it's like, yeah, it's
Mhm.
find yes, it's, sharing your knowledge is a cool thing, and it's
Mhm.
like, and it shouldn't be a secret, because it's like we're not in competition with each other in any
Yeah.
in any real meaningful sense.
Mm-mm.
It's a, there are 500 billion things streaming on Twitch at any given moment, and one more is not going to make a
Right.
difference. You know, and the guy you teach today how to get started might be the partner in some future venture, or future production that suddenly makes the difference of a thing being an idea or a thing being real. And I have seen that happen with people,
Yeah.
so it's like, that is a real thing where it's like,
Yeah.
you can give people their start, and then they can, give it back to you.
And even zooming that down, like in from like the production side down to like just the TTRPG side, I can tell you that a friend of mine who I introduced to D&D and tabletop RPGs, like a year later or so, started running his own game, and now when we talk about it, he's saying stuff that he does that I'm like, that's a really good idea. That's incredible. I'm gonna use that. And like,
The student has become the master.
exactly, exactly. So yeah,
Communication and collaboration between people who do the same thing is so important.
Mhm.
Like there's just so much to learn from other people who do something even just kind of like what you do.
mm-hmm.
Just being suspended in, in the ether of your industry, or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. It's like, I used to live in New York, and I was a lawyer when I first started trying to be a screenwriter, and I would be boring people to death, at my office, talking about, and I just finished McKee, and he says blah 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 blah, and like, they're just looking at me like I'm nuts. And it's like, then you come out here and you start a conversation about screenwriting, and suddenly everybody's like, oh, okay, we're talking about something, and now everybody's got a perspective, and everyone, that's different and something to offer. And like, just having that kind of stuff around, like surrounding yourself with people who are trying to do the same things you are,
Mm-hmm.
it just, I think, advances your craft. And yeah, it's, it's such an important part of it, if you can get that going.
Yeah, definitely.
Although I don't want to be discouraging for people who can't get that going. It's like, hey, some of the best people in the world fought it out and, got to the top of the mountain on their own, So, don't be stopped by the
Yeah.
fact, if you are, if you are not in a production town surrounded by people who are all streaming RPGs, it's like, you can do it.
We've been talking a lot about the things that we've learned and stuff, and I will say that for anybody who wants to start doing this, who is watching this, do what you can with who and what you have, because making anything is still like is better than just not doing it, because like you don't necessarily need 6 people with amazing lighting and audio equipment and like super complicated overlays and full body character art for every, like, you don't have to have those things to stream your game. If your barrier to starting to do it, to like dipping your foot into making a show out of your game, is turning on the camera and kind of finding an overlay that you think works for you, then like start there.
Yeah. To quote one Captain Jean-Luc Picard, do not allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I'm also like, I'm a big believer in art from adversity. It's like, if you can't figure out a good background, it's like, hey, maybe you're gonna, play the game that takes place in space and it's just black back there. And if you can't, light stuff well, maybe it's a horror game now, and the low lighting becomes a selling point. And it's like, just, there are ways to turn your weaknesses into strengths.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to, build around what you have. And it's like, time tested. My favorite example of art from adversity is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Famous story about how Indiana Jones was supposed to have a huge choreographed battle with the Cairo swordsman. And like, what I heard, I saw Karen Allen talk in person at a Raiders screening. What she said was, the food on the set was like infested with flies and stuff, and everybody was getting sick. And Harrison Ford like had the runs that morning, and like could not stay out of the bathroom for more than 2 minutes at a time. And like, what happened was, he just looked at Steven Spielberg and was just like, "Hey, if this was real life, I'd just pull out my gun and shoot the guy." He's like, "I wouldn't go through this whole big choreographed whip sword battle." He's like, "I'd just be like, boom." And Spielberg was like, "You know what? Let's just do that." And they shot it like that, and getting around that problem turned into basically one of the most famous movie moments in the history of film.
Yeah,
And it's
the bit where Indy's just like,
yeah, it's just like, it's like, what, I'm not going to get involved in this, boom, and it's just like, because they had a problem that they needed to like think their way around. And it's like that moment is probably more memorable than any big choreographed battle they could have stuck in that part of the movie. And it's like, it's like, just, let your imagination run to turn your weaknesses into strengths, and find that art from adversity. And it's like, you do not need all the stuff that like a Critical Role has to create. It's like you can make great stuff.
And that's the thing, like you got to start somewhere. You can build on whatever you start on. You can build on whatever. Like if you go back and watch like our earliest TTRPG streams, don't do that. You'll see it's not fun to look at. It's like the overlays are a mess. It's so hard to read some of the stuff. You can barely see the character art. It's a mess. But like we built on it, and now we're where we are. So yeah. I think that's fairly. Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say the most important thing I think that you can have when you're doing that is people to do it with. Rule of Lore super would not get along without the combined effort of all three of us.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah,
it helps to have a team to keep you going.
Yeah.
And even if it's just people who will cheerlead you, who will DoorDash you like a cup of coffee and lunch some days, even if it's just something like that, somebody who listens to you just like rave about what a monstrosity Streamlabs OBS is to get working and keep running, like as long as you have people who are there to support you in doing it, like you've got one of the biggest pieces of what you need.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty good note to end this episode on.
Yeah,
you made it, Rick. You made it through another one.
I don't know how we keep doing this. Because y'all are pros, and so relying on the team just carries me through.
Exactly.
Just to tie that.
No. No, it's super good to have you back. Seriously, it's always so fun.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
this was a blast.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and for showing up tonight, hanging out with us, and sharing your thoughts in the chat there. Just some quick reminders before we go. Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we will be here live with special guest Rachel Billings or Raybird or Ray's Retros. We'll be here playing the Blackout Club game about a bunch of teens investigating terrifying paranormal shit in their neighborhood.
You're totally dressed for that game right now, man.
There it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we are.
But yeah, so that'll be on Sunday, and the rest of the week will be regular week. We'll have Infinite Horizon on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Our Cypher System sci-fi superheroes actual play will have that next, and of course next Friday we will have this very show that you're watching right now, Ramblemancy, at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Stay tuned for information on that.
So I don't mean to like drop on the whole competition thing, but also Sunday at 5 you can catch Power Play over at Q Times. But that's not competition. Don't take it that way. That's I'm sticking with the whole we're not in competition with each other point. So
absolutely, no, 100%. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to end with. Rick, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, what you're up to, all that stuff.
I mean, you find me on Twitter or Instagram at rbud913, or you can follow PowerPlay at PowerPlayRPG, which is, basically, that is all I do, because like everyone in my cast is in like 25 games at any given time. I don't know how people do that. I sort of takes all my wherewithal just to kind of concentrate on one world at a time. So I am on Power Plays. It's Sunday. We are at the beginning of our fourth season, and it's all been really great. So you can tune in and see Caitlin, who's a regular in these parts over there with that crew too.
Excellent. Before we go, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. But just before we go, I want to remind everybody that if you're not already in our Discord and you want to follow along with what we're doing, want to be the first ones to know if there's schedule changes or anything like that, you want to be in the Discord. And not only that, but you can also, aside from logistical stuff, you'll plenty of places to chat about TTRPG stuff. You can keep the conversations from Ramblemancy going long after the stream has ended. You can awake to a chorus of good mornings and good zones every morning.
I love that about our Discord. I wake up in the morning and I open Discord, and the two servers that I usually check the most and first, ours and another friend's who streams, and it's just a chorus of everybody good zoning each other, and it makes it's such a good way. It's such a heartwarming way to start my day.
Yeah. And of course, if you would like to support us, you may subscribe to us here on Twitch, but if you would like to support us in more substantial and meaningful ways, you can support us you can find us on our Patreon, where we have a lot of cool stuff that you can go check out. We have a coffee where we will be occasionally, we haven't done it in a while, but we update our short-term goals and things like that, that you can support us and help us reach. Or most recently, we have our Streamlabs monthly tipping, or just regular tipping, with the link to which can be found by using either one of the commands in the title of the stream. I think it's still in there. I'm pretty sure it's still in there. I sort of went into a fugue state when I was putting in the stream info.
There's the mood for putting in stream info.
Yeah, all of those ways are ultimately better for us than subscribing on Twitch. However, if you choose to subscribe here on Twitch, because it is very convenient, we will still appreciate you and your contribution very, very much. That's all we've got for tonight, everyone. We will hopefully see you on Sunday for the Blackout Club stream, but if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody. Rick, thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you.
Later,
Happy
everybody.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy
indeed.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Whoa.
Yeah.